Hey folks, please be seated. The program is about to start.
One, two, check, 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 hey, 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 hey. Sound check, hey. Hey, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, sound check. You can keep talking amongst yourselves. We're just sound checking right now. It's a little preview for what we're gonna do. Sound check right now. Check. I don't hear my keys yet. Da-dum. Okay, everyone's already paying attention. That's, wow. Yeah, how's everyone doing? Come on, we're Asian and we're together. How's everyone doing? We got, Touch my keys, okay, there you go. I'm just gonna do a little sound check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, maybe I'll lead a meditation while we wait for the keys to work. Everyone take a deep breath in and exhale. Beautiful. All right, well that was a tease. See you soon.
There's a buzz. Sound guy.
Go to give us a stand.
Huh?
Give us a stand.
Yes.
Can we get audio transfer, please?
Mike.
Hello. All right, quick check again. How we doing? Let's go. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. I'm excited to introduce, we just got the tease, but I'm excited to introduce singer-songwriter, producer, and advocate, Milk, who will perform her song, Metamorphosis, and will preview an exciting new song, Closer. Milk, the floor is yours.
All right, in the fashion of life, plans change. So I'm gonna try something. So there was a song I wrote a while ago that went viral in 2017 for the Women's March. It became known as an unofficial anthem for the women's movement. And the lyrics are, "I can't keep quiet, a one-woman riot." So it's no mistake. I didn't fully quite understand how how I was directly protesting to some of the stereotypes of being an Asian woman, and amidst so many other things. I think outside of being, even if you're not Asian, you're not a woman, like you understand what it means to want to be heard. And so I wanna just start this a cappella.
Put on your face, know your place. Shut up and smile, don't spread your legs. I could do that, but no one knows me, no one ever will. If I don't say something, if I just lie still, they may see a monster, they may run away. If I let them hear what I have to say.
And I heard this in a dream, and I said,
I can't keep quiet, no, I can't keep quiet, no, I'm a one-woman riot, no, I can't keep quiet for anyone, oh, not anymore.
and then this video went viral of me singing it with 24 other women, and then choirs all over the world, from Japan to Ghana to Hong Kong, Sweden, Germany, they sang with me.
'Cause no one knows me, no one ever will. If I don't say something, if I just lie still, they may see a monster, they may run away. But I have to do this. I can't keep quiet. No, I can't keep quiet. No, a one-woman riot.
And all these choirs singing made me remember, oh, I'm not alone. Because if we speak our story, we speak our truth, the wind will carry it to all different parts of the world.
I can't keep quiet, no, I can't keep quiet, no.
And then some of you are wondering, oh, is she gonna make us sing along? She's at a piano and she's got this like emotional song, and oh God, it's happening, it's happening. Okay, so everyone goes,
I can't keep quiet, no, no, no.
let me hear you.
I can't keep quiet,
Come on.
no, no, no.
Let me hear you. Yeah.
Louder, I can't keep
Hey, give yourselves a round of applause. You're using your voice in different ways, so I'm just doing the more literal interpretation of it. That's been a dream of mine, to have a room filled with advocates and Asian Americans, just like, we're here, we're doing our thing, and we can't keep quiet, and it's such an honor to be here. Thank you for singing that with me. This next song is a new song. If you want to help me out and follow me, my artist name is Milk, M-I-L-C-K. The algorithm loves it when you press that little heart or follow button. And this is a new song called Metamorphosis. I thought it'd be perfect to play it for this audience because as I was watching the AAPI hate rise during the quarantine, as all of us were watching, I was like, oh, we are in a time of metamorphosis. We are, as a generation, deciding how we want to redefine who we are. And so this song reminds me of the wings of a butterfly, and I've been telling everyone this story. If we try to assist the butterfly from its writhing and wriggling in the chrysalis, if we rip it so it can come out sooner, we actually kill the butterfly, because we rob it of its chance to strengthen its wings with every struggle. And that's what I view personally in my own metamorphosis as a woman, but also as a culture, a community, as a people. We are going through that. So when we're struggling and writhing, just know that there's a whole future where our wet wings are going to dry. So hope you enjoy this song.
All these changes feel like death, yet my heart's still pounding in my chest. I'm on the rise, I'm on the rise, I can see my breath. All these changes won't kill me. Ooh, I was born for this. Ooh, metamorphosis. Give it a little more time, a little more time. Wet wings they will dry. Ooh, I was born for this. Been through pain and growth like teenage boys. I find strength in the faith of letting go. I'm on the rise, I'm on the rise, here I go. Oh, pain and growth, you feed my soul. Ooh, I was born for this. Ooh, metamorphosis. Giving a little more time, a little more time. Wet wings they will dry. A little more time, a little more time. Meant for greater heights. Change this big feels like death, but I believe it's for the best. Cut the ties, say goodbye. I'm finally ready. Give it a little more time, a little more time. Give it a little more time, a little more time. A little more time, a little more time. Wet wings they will dry. Ooh, I was born for this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That was a beautiful song. Thank you for Closer. Everybody give it up. It's incredible. I'm like fangirling back here because everybody who has graced this stage is now making it back there, and I'm just so moved by the incredible talent and the the variety of skill and love and passion, and it feels so warm to just see all of these faces that you feel like you know. When you see Asian people in the room, it just feels like you know them. And you can bum rush anybody, you can just like hug them like crazy. Lisa Ling's not like angry that I wrinkled her dress. Like, it's just so cool to be able to meet these people, these policy changers, these influencers. Everybody back there is so excited that this event was made and came to fruition. I'm so proud to be here. And I actually just recently had a really emotional trip. I took my husband is Black American, and I took him to my home country of Vietnam for the very first time. We have a daughter. Thank you. If you've ever been to Vietnam, I think it's one of the top 3 amazing places you'll ever visit in the world. And my daughter, her name is Monaco, so she's half Black and half Vietnamese. And I'm trying so hard to preserve my Vietnamese language by speaking to her in Vietnamese. And I don't even think I'm correct when I speak Vietnamese. It sounds terrible, but I'm teaching her and I'm trying, you know. So when I went through Vietnam, I took him from the south to the north. My mom's from the south, my dad's from the north. And if you know anything about Vietnam, they're 2 completely different regions. I think that the south is like the dirty south. They got their swag, they're a little gritty, they're a little rough around the edges. And then Hanoi is just very hoity-toity, they're very French with the way they move, and they kind of side-eye me all the time, but I tell them, like, my dad's from there, so don't step. I will cut you, because I'm also from the South. But it was such an amazing experience because he had no expectation of what the Asian culture was going to be like. And I didn't too, you know, bringing somebody home who doesn't speak the language and is also of a very different, you know, skin. I didn't know if we should prepare for anything or if I had to preface anything. But the greatest thing about our people in every Asian country that you visit, I don't know how North Korea is, but I think the rest of them, which I've been to many of them, they're so warm. And the most exciting thing about being Asian is if you want to know about our culture, if you want to indulge, try our foods, speak a word, learn more about us, we open our arms and our doors for you and we welcome you to the table. And that's exactly what Vietnam was like for my husband, and that's exactly what it feels like here backstage, and it's exactly what I feel like here as we've been introducing everybody here to you on stage. You've given such a warm welcome because that's what Asians do. We welcome you into our family. That's what AAPI Heritage Month is about. And I'm just so excited that we're here to give everybody the warmest welcome. Thank you for being that for everybody here. Now, he not only will moderate an esteemed panel of AA and NHPI creatives, but he is the man who puts the bing in bling and the gold in golden touch. No, because this guy right here is literally turning the industry into pure gold, one project at a time. He is not just my friend, but this guy is a true game changer in the world of entertainment and representation. Please give it up big time for my man, CEO and co-founder of Gold House, Bing Chen! Right? I know.
Y'all give it up for Jeannie Mai. All right, White House Forum on AA and NHPIs. Good afternoon, everybody. All right, we're gonna begin. We have half an hour. We got a lot to cover. First and foremost, please welcome the incredible Rupi Kaur. Rupi is, of course, an incredible poet, #1, multiple-time New York best-selling author, has probably my favorite live special I've ever seen in my entire life, which you can access online. It's incredible. And is responsible for half of my cries in the last 7 years. Welcome, Rupi, again. All right, next to her is Godfather, actor, producer, statesman, Daniel Day Kim. Give it up. Daniel is not just the leading man of leading men. He is a phenomenally successful producer with a hit broadcast show, and as we all know, on all the things across DC, has committed so much of his time, heart, and work, unlike any other artist I have personally seen, to the cause. Give it up again for Uncle DDK. Uncle. Next is Madam Gina Rosero. Give it up for Gina Rosero. A model, activist, author, teaser, soon to be successful producer. Gina has transformed narratives for the trans community and has a brand new, stunning debut memoir called Horse Barbie that always be selling. How did that happen? The debut's on May 30th. And last but certainly most, Aaron Salah. Please welcome from the CEO of Gravitas Pacifica, Aaron. Aaron's company, Gravitas Pacifica, focuses on harnessing the incredible power and stories of the Native Hawaiian, local Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community across creative industries so his and their stories are accurately and affirmingly told. Give it up for Aaron. All right, let's begin. So this is the fun panel today, so we need you all to be vocal. I'm gonna start with some softballs so we can ease it up. Number one is succinctly, why did each of you pursue media and entertainment? And what was your first job? We'll start with Ruby.
I should go first because it's like
Okay, we'll start with Ruby.
I feel like I didn't, it sounds so corny, it chose me, but I was 15 years old, working at Tim Hortons. Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. I was 15, I was working at Tim Hortons, which is Canada's version of Dunkin' Donuts, but less hectic. And when I wasn't working or, in high school, I was writing poetry and I was performing it in my local community. And it was really the performing it on stage that made me fall in love with the craft. And I was writing mostly about what it meant to be a South Asian girl growing up in the West. And I've always been a big reader and always hungry for books written by Asian women, which weren't always easy to come by. And there's a famous quote by Toni Morrison. She says that if you find a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, write the book. And I might be butchering that quote, but you get my point. And so I decided that I was going to write the poetry that I wanted to read. And it's been such a beautiful journey to be able to become a published author, tour the world like a musician, and now also write and work within entertainment.
All right.
That's a touching story.
Godfather Kim.
First of all, hi everybody. Aloha, as everyone has been saying, because I'm from Hawaii too. I'm so glad, like when we talk so much about the problems and the issues in our community, that we get a chance to do something like this where we can celebrate how far we've come. So thank you all for being here. I feel so encouraged by all of it.
An extra thank you, by the way, to Rebecca Lee, Grace Choi, as well as Philip and others. Thank you so much to them, especially.
Give it up for
Y'all
Phil
give it up
Kim
for
and
them.
Jeannie Mai, guys.
Yes.
They've been so great today. Anyway, what was the question being? How did I get here?
Why did you pursue entertainment? So real talk, do y'all remember a show called Lost? This was the man who got all of us dates. So, why did you pursue entertainment, and thank you for your service?
I'm going to be as corny as the previous answer. I went into college as a political science major, planning to be a lawyer. And so, like maybe one or two of you out there, I love political science. I wanted to learn how our government worked, and I still have a fascination with it. But I took an acting class somewhere in my sophomore year because I had an elective to burn, and I thought, what the heck? 20-something years later, here I am. And that's really how it started. My first job was at a theater called Pan Asian Repertory in New York City. Do you guys, anyone? Yeah, all right. So Pan Asian Rep, it's worth me mentioning Pan Asian Rep because it's one of two theaters in America, or that's not true anymore, but at the time, that focused on Asian Americans. It gave Asian Americans the chance to work on classical plays like Shakespeare and Chekhov and Ibsen. And the first play I ever did professionally was A Doll's House. And I was like 30 years too young to play this role, but I was so lucky to get the opportunity to play someone who was, not from Asia in a classical piece. And it's why these kinds of theaters are so important. As we talk about representation, we have to talk about history. And we cannot forget theaters like East West Players,
Yes.
Pan Asian Rep, Ma Yi, Natco. So, yeah, give it up. So that was my first job, and I'm grateful to those theaters, because otherwise, who knows how long it would have been before I had worked.
I don't understand how you're 30 years too old when you're 29, but math's not my forte. So, Ms. Rosero, how about you?
Hi, hello. So we started with a poet, so we'll do the word rhyming here. Corny, too. I'm going to start with Quinley. How's that? So it's the month of May. Actually, in the Philippines, the month of May is also peak Catholic trans pageant celebration. Right? Let me say that, because in the Philippines, almost every day during the month of May, there's Catholic fiesta celebrations. And in the Philippines, usually on those 5-day celebration, on the 5th day of that day, usually that falls on a Sunday, the main event for everybody, like a stage like this, is a trans beauty pageant. And usually it's in front of the church, right? And the judges are celebrities and all that, right? So we have that culture. So when I was 15 years old, I was watching one of these pageants, and this woman named Tiger Lily, who's my trans mother, became my mentor, saw me and said, you should join one of these pageants. So I ended up joining my first trans pageant at 15 years old. I ended up winning second runner-up, best in swimsuit, best in long gown. Something simple. And thus, doing pageants and moving to New York City as a fashion model and now producer led me to here I am.
Very good. Mr. Salah.
No leila kavelino ke aloha me o ko pakahi nui ko uhau oli e noho mai me ke ia mau celebrities ma ke ia kahua nei a noho mau ma nei me o ko aloha aloha aloha. I've never ever thought of the work that I do as entertainment. I've always thought of it as storytelling, and storytelling is hard work, because the goal of storytelling is to inform life according to worldview. And so in the 90s, I was living in New York, in Riverdale, studying conducting. If I followed the trajectory of my life, I would be conducting orchestras today. Got on a flight to go home and pack my things and come back to the city permanently. And on the flight, I decided I wanted to live at home. And what that necessitated was a reinvention of the work that I was going to do, of who I was going to be. And I walked into really becoming the MC of a Polynesian review. 1,000 years ago, Tupe, the great Maori navigator, led his people across the ocean. In their migration, they came across a group of islands over which hovered a great and majestic white cloud. Hence the name Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. And so that was, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Someone got that on camera, right?
Arigato. And so what that work in Polynesian Review for Tihati Productions in Waikiki did, Faftai, set, of course, this trajectory toward work that I do in storytelling. And more importantly, it's a Disney word, but I'm going to co-opt it and appropriate it, story living, because the work that we do in storytelling is really, again, informing living of life in a world that is in dire need of really good storytellers. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to jump around. I want to focus this next part of the conversation on what has changed since you started your creative and storytelling careers, and most importantly, what still needs to change for our community. Rupi, I'll pick on you first, and then we're going to jump around. I distinctly remember majoring in English in undergrad and being asked by everyone, what is it like to be unemployed after you graduate? You have not only made poetry into a very viable career, but a one where you have given language to an entire generation who can reimagine their place. Even Jeannie Mai 20 minutes ago backstage, I think we were all crying. She can share that story maybe. But what has changed since you started your poetic career and narrative career, and what still needs to change systemically?
I would say what's changed is, I guess, the impression of poetry. When I started performing about 13 years ago, and when I self-published my first book in 2014, I remember telling people, like gatekeepers in the industry, oh my God, I want to publish a book of poetry, and I was so naive. And they just laughed, because in their eyes, they were like, there's no market for poetry. That's just not, that's not going to happen. And it was a time where it was still very uncommon for digitally native artists to gain success in the ways that they are right now on places like TikTok and Instagram. And I feel like it was difficult at first because gatekeepers, they couldn't have imagined that a brown girl would write a book that would one day outsell Homer's The Odyssey and become like the highest selling book of poetry of all time.
Yes.
And which is a fact I learned a couple weeks ago, and I think is so cool, so I'm going to keep saying it until somebody's like, that's not true, but it is. So I'm like, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. And I think what's changed since is that so many of my peers have proven that that's not true. There was this idea that young people don't read poetry and there's no audience for it, but so many of my peers within the community have not only proven that to be untrue, but they've helped to expand the genre, which is really cool. And something in my line of work that I think needs to change is we're at a place where there's a danger of being further silenced because book bans are on the rise exponentially in school districts across America. And so many of these books that are being banned are about our stories written by AAPI and Native Hawaiian authors. They're about our experiences, including my own. And that's really scary. And I think I try to my trick is, one, we gotta continue to celebrate how far we've come and really lean into that joy, and then also use that joy to continue marching upwards toward a more just world.
Very good. Aaron, Ruby invokes a really essential part of narrative change, which is the education system. And as we all know, education is not just in school, it's evergreen. As they say, sometimes we graduate to go back into elementary school as adults. No, in terms of immaturity. And so I guess my question to you is, at a systemic level, the NHPI community, if I'm not mistaken, represents 6% of the global Asian diaspora. It's material, and we both know what the numbers unfortunately look like within storytelling. They're meek. What needs to systematically change for your community as well as our diaspora?
Yeah, thank you for that. You know what's a challenge for me is I've never felt invisible. And that may be because I grew up in a society that is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. I'm all three, check, check, check. Right? And so what's fascinating to me about having grown up and lived inside of a community like Hawaii is that we have found a way, and we negotiate this peace daily, but we have found a way to celebrate each other. We eat each other's food, we go to each other's homes, we sing each other's songs, we dance each other's dances. And so the way that informs what happens in a school, and maybe this is a bit biased just because of my own experience, and I'm ignorant of the experience outside of Hawaii. It's one of the reasons I chose to stay home, is that we have this responsibility to live into the power of our identities. We have this responsibility. My math teacher in 7th grade used to say, you didn't lose your homework. Your homework knows where it is. Your homework has lost you. And so I've really taken that, we haven't lost our identity. Our identity is there. What we have to do is live into it and allow it to be what we need for it to be in order to empower us to be the people that we're supposed to be in a 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 30th century context. And so how that matriculates down into the classroom is that teachers have to afford themselves the power of their own vulnerability to accept that students come with very different experiences and allow those individual experiences to inform the collective success of the whole. And that is an incredibly powerful thing. This is one thing that the US is really, really bad at. The US is really, really bad at vulnerability. And if the US would allow itself to be vulnerable as individual citizens of the country, I think we would find that the power of that vulnerability provides for us the pathway to much more in authority, much more in empathy, much more in power than we allow ourselves to access now. Because we're afraid. We shouldn't be.
I think we're at church right now. Is it Sunday? Yo, give it up for Aaron Salah. Daniel, let's talk about another system outside of education, which is the system you occupy and lead in, the studio network and streaming platform ecosystem. I think something that's really rare about you, and you know this, is you're one of the only people who's successfully been in front and behind the camera at the highest levels. It's you and Mindy Kaling, and there's only so few. What still needs to change on that system to ensure that more of our stories and our leadership can take shape?
Well, Bing, you're uniquely equipped to answer this question as well. So I would put the same question to you, but let me contribute first. I would say it's not a one simple answer. It's not a silver bullet answer. There are a lot of things, and I'll just point out a couple of them. One is that we need more executives in the C-suites. No matter how much we push as producers, we're still subject to approval by someone else, by the people who are moneyed. And in my industry, it's studios or independently wealthy billionaires, one or the other. And sometimes that's both, the same thing. But the fact is that, people tend to want to approve stories and see stories that reflect their own experience. And when you don't have people who look like us, who are in the approval seats, then we are asking them to go outside of their own experience to accept our own experience, which is why it's so important for us to speak up about our own experiences and in that specificity find what's universal to everybody, because that's what we can find that's common in our humanity, and that's what everyone can get behind. So that's one of the issues. I think there also is an issue of support. All of you here, we're in a self-selected group. We're all here celebrating today, and I'm sure all of you can remember films like Who Killed Vincent Chin? Helen Zia is here today. And
yes.
Yeah, give it up for Helen Zia. And as monumental a project as that was at that time, it was hard for it to extend beyond the echo chamber of Asian America. So the idea that Asian Americans can support our work and have it reach beyond our own community is really important. And now we're finding that with films like Parasite and Everything Everywhere All at Once. We're no longer saying, right? We're no longer saying, wow, we support this because it's an Asian American film. We're saying we support it because it's a fucking amazing film. So it's about us supporting our own community and showing our pride in who we are, and let that be magnetic, let that be attractive to everyone else, and it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. But really, Bing, I want to put the same question to you, because as the leader of Gold House, you know as much about this as anyone.
I'm really not supposed to speak. It's supposed to be about panelists. But
I'm asking.
very quick. Agree on executives. I think to shout out a lot of our community, the good news is our executives are putting in the work to make sure they're being inclusive of all traditionally marginalized groups. I'll give you two. The two largest media companies in the world by market cap, specifically on visual change, Netflix and Disney. The two people who greenlight stories and marketing at Disney are Asian women, Bella Bajaria and Marion Lee Dickus. Now, this is powerful because they not only have crushed incredible stories that resonate locally and happen to be for a global audience as well, but Asian women are the least likely demographic to be promoted to management, and yet, look at Bella and Marion. I think the second one is Disney. Newly appointed chief brand officer is Asad Ayaz. This is a queer South Asian man who now controls the single biggest marketing budget in the world for the biggest brands in the world, Marvel to Pixar. That is powerful, right? And this is one of ours. And so I think executives is absolutely one. I think the second is also a mind shift of making sure that not only can we infiltrate, dare I say, or support existing systems, but also have our own, like what you've done with 3AD Media. So you have all these great multicultural leaders who have their own funds, who can greenlight their own projects and tell them very specifically. I think the third piece is allyship gets thrown around like a platitude, but the reality is a lot of our experiences are quite concentric, and the way that we need to solve them are quite concentric. Not to over whatever something, but we're about to announce on the Gold Gala this Saturday with the Latino community. If our two communities can get it together, we will positively, hopefully, influence the next 5 decades of the earth, because we are the fastest growing.
Exponentially.
That's right. And they are often omitted, as we all know, from diversity conversations.
Right.
And so anyway, so it's a litany of solutions. There's no panacea. I need to stop talking now. Gina Rosero. Something that I love about what Daniel said in invoking everything everywhere all at once is, and the Daniels and Jonathan Wong are on the record for this, is it is so Asian. It is strong because of, not in spite of itself, and because of that is the most awarded film of all time and A24's most lucrative. You as a human being are a beacon because your art is your existence. It is entirely autobiographical. There is no hiding your scripture. So for you, what still needs to change in the industry?
Thank you for that. You know, in storytelling, now as a director, writer, producer, there's this virtue or saying that the personal is universal. I would like to add to that, particularly from the lens and the perspective of a trans woman as a trans Filipina immigrant, someone who have just written a book who's about to come out on May 30, pre-order. And I'd like to add that the personal is expansive. In this story, in the projects that I'm doing, I care about the character, especially when it's really rooted from their personal truth, right? Because for so long, particularly as a trans Filipina, our stories are told by cisgender people, right? In this moment, as I'm sharing this stage, I am standing here, I'm sitting here, sharing this space as a very proud trans woman, because when I moved to New York City in 2005 as a fashion model, I had to disappear. I had to go stealth. For 8 years, the fashion industry did not know I was trans. My model agent, my business partner, did not know I was trans. And I certainly recognize the degree of privilege to that. But for 8 years, yes, I've achieved all that, right? I was in the business that is all about the power of imagery, but I was not being seen. I was so visible in covers of magazines and billboards, but I was also consciously invisible. It's this dual reality that I was managing, and doing that for 8 years took its toll emotionally, physically, and all that. And I think as what I'm doing now, and as I'm telling more stories, creating more stories, directing more stories, more so, even in my book, that Horse Barbie that I've written, I wanted to honor the long history of gender fluidity in our AA, PI, Native Hawaiian culture, right? In the Philippines, the babaylan, the pre-colonial culture, the pre-colonial spiritual leaders, right? The Hijra in India, the Fa'afafine in American Samoa, the Mahu, right? It is in our the Katoys in India, it is in our very DNA, the notion of gender fluidity. We need to honor that, particularly as we're centering stories. What we're seeing right now in anti-trans legislation all over this country, we need to be there for particularly our AAPI trans youth. As I go to places now, as I do interviews and press for my book, people ask me about all that anti-trans legislation. And yes, I acknowledge that. But more so, I think, as a storyteller, I care about the lived experience and the people behind those anti-trans statistics and legislation. And I say this, it's because they see, those people that's trying to take away our humanity, they see our power. Trans, gender non-conforming people has the answer to this rigid binary that we've been led to believe. That's why they're trying to take it away from us. So I just wanted to simply honor that and recognize the power in that in our history.
There it is. As we mentioned earlier, we're so grateful to Rebecca Lee, Phil, Executive Director KAI, and of course Grace Choi for having us at the White House Forum on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders. Because we're in DC and because this is a rare privilege, in 1 minute each, I know you all see the clock, what is your message to DC, whether it's narrative, storytelling, entertainment related or not?
I would say that we're living in a time where, you know, it's so not interesting, it's horrible, but interesting, like how all of it is happening at once. Books are being banned at alarming rates. Abortion is illegal. Trans rights are being taken away. And it's more important than ever to continue to empower the communities that we serve.
I would say, and this is not just for the entertainment industry, I would ask Washington to catch up. I would, you know, not when it comes to social issues, not just when it comes to social issues, but when it comes to technological issues. Right now, the writers are striking all across the country and one of the issues is technology. We are on the brink in the infancy of AI that will significantly affect all of our lives, and all of the people who are up on this stage will be drastically affected. ChatGPT can write poetry. ChatGPT can write scripts. ChatGPT, not ChatGPT, but other AI programs can put my face on anyone's body. So this is stuff that Washington needs to not only understand, but learn about. And so when they can't understand what a finsta is, they've got a lot of catching up to do. That's what I would say.
DDK, what's your finsta? Gina, go ahead.
You know, it's simple for me. Support trans rights, support trans youth, honor the long history in our culture. It's simple for me in that, and that goes a long way. Thank you.
Mr. Salah.
Just to echo this incredible group of colleagues on this panel, embrace empathy. It is the thing that will guide us into the future. Embrace empathy and understand that the world is bigger than each of us individually.
Aaron Salah, Gina Rosero, Daniel Day Kim, and Ruby Kaur. Please give it up, everyone. Thank you so much again.
I te e tau tini helawai amanu he upena tuu I kanoe ka pōpo e tahi aua ho o punia ela I ta ohu ka ki kepa kena ila iluna o ta auana I tauahi noe ke ka peko hei ai kai amanu o pu o ali. O ke ali I wale no ka umake make o taluhi o maua mai nei o ka mākou lea lea no I hea waike ai. Ai ela. Ka welina o ke aloha me o kou pakahi, o te tū lai ma le whaaloalo, ma o te tau tala ma le whaetete, o te wha tulou atu ai lo o tau paia, tulou na lava. Our very dear friend, Pacific Islander, scholar, thinker, leader, E Peli Hau'ofa, was inspired to write Our Sea of Islands while on an excursion in Hawaii. Although we take credit as Hawaiians for the immediate spark that led to what has become a cornerstone of Pacific thought in poetic prose, what informed his view was an entire lifetime of living and breathing and knowing what it means to be from the ocean, from Oceania, from Pacifica. We are one saltwater people, born into a genealogy ordained by the ancestors, painted in the stars, carved into the sea. In our DNA is the lifeblood of a people born unto the ocean, voyagers of time and of space. In June of 2024, on behalf of the United States, Hawaii will host the 13th Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture, inaugurated in 1972 in Fiji and produced every 4 years, save 2020, during which the pandemic precipitated the festival's postponement. FestPac, as it is now affectionately called, has convened delegates from some 28 Pacific Island nations into what has become the largest gathering and engagement of indigenous peoples in the entire world. Our responsibility is heavy because we are accountable not just for the procurement and preparation of venues and event design and management. We are also, and more importantly, responsible for hosting some 3,500 Pacific delegates, traditional leaders, heads of state and entourage, and hosting these important guests in a very Pacific way, Kalofai. As executive director of the 13th FestPac, it is my great honor to introduce you all to 2 Pacific Islander performers here today to share song and dance of their respective homelands, representatives of their Oceania. Igelau Mise'ach, is from Palau in Micronesia. She performs in the traditional dance style of her homeland, of first appreciation and responsibility, and then of gratitude to the land, the sea, and the sky. She closes with a traditional women's chant, Igelau Mise'ach.
Oh, the swakle. Oh, the swakle lang. Ema the malasoyang. Alarul bakaledeng makngit. The tal bakale ungil nakadako siyang. Way. Molay lewakliyang Iray the may giluto Yulda ubebas ka Dice seloria Balwaga bulang Balwaga bulang Mardira Didang lul malul Talmangat mon sa ubersak Talmangat mon sa ubersak Dice seloriyang Wandir gangi the swakle Wow Alerong oh hui Igelau Mise'ach. John Tauket, excuse me. Don't we come from the most incredible people on the planet? Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders. Sorry, I'm so preachy today. But can you just give ourselves a round of applause? John Taukeve sings a song of his native Rotuma, a group of islands off the coast of Fiji. I go to the sea, he sings. I find peace and feel it coursing through my veins, embracing my hanua, my homeland. Ladies and gentlemen, John Taukeve.
As the sun gets smaller beyond the horizon, sinking slowly to the ocean. Birds fly back to where they belong as we sail through to the motherland. Kafauhi sa takwa mangoe so okya ot mota volu kafa maleng raksa mangohoha. Kayoni kopu asengo maro itokya salva stonte islas. If I knew I would have stayed back in Andy. As the waves come rushing in and the crews are running up and down, well, I know this would stop. So I covered her up, kissed her goodnight, stood up to see. I can hear women chanting. Well, I know this would be the only way we get to the islands. Yeah, 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 yeah. I can only hear, yeah, 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 yeah. Overnight and through the storm, and finally the rain has stopped. I can see rainbows as clouds cleared out. The morning mist comes splashing through my face. I can feel the ocean vibe through my veins. Kafauhi sa takwa mangoe so okya ot mota volu kafa maleng raksa mangohoha. Kayoni kopu asengo maro itokya salva stonte islas. If I knew I would have stayed back in Andy. As the waves come rushing in and the crews are running up and down, well, I know this would stop. So I covered her up, kissed her goodnight, stood up to see. I can hear women chanting. Well, I know this would be the only way we get to the islands. Yeah, 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 yeah. I can only hear, yeah, 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 yeah. I can only hear, yeah, 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 yeah. Kafauhi sa takwa mangoe so okya ot mota volu kafa maleng raksa mangohoha. Kayani kopu asengo maro itokya salva stonte islas. If I knew I could have stayed back in Andy.
John Talkeve.
Os mapurot, os matelephone ngas tu atu ko itaang hanua molo. Usia teletuk sa fo la mayur kalong ya more.
Minaka. Like say air. Both John and Igelau sing simultaneously of longing and of immense pride. Pride in and longing for their people and their homelands. In the United States, we often forget the important role that cultural practice and artistic expression play in informing worldview and how the circular and cyclical nature of our worldviews and cultural and artistic expressions further inform how we actually live in and with the world in which we all live together. In many ways, the Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture represents the manifestation of President Biden's Pacific Partnership Strategy and provides an opportunity to the United States to rekindle relationships with the Pacific and with Pacific Islanders to establish and reinvigorate the most important kind of power in our region, soft power. Power that is firstly founded and then grounded in listening, in contemplation, in empathy. Thank you all for being here, for your energy, for allowing us to be here with all of you. Please allow me to offer my greatest appreciation and gratitude to Crystal Ka'ai, to Erica Moritsugu, to Georgette Furukawa, Rebecca and Phil, and the production team of this incredible forum for providing this time and space for us to share. A very important thank you to Eric Chang, coordinator of the arts program at East West Center and the Pacific Island Development Program, for providing support to bring JJ and Ihilau here today. We look forward to welcoming all of you, to seeing all of you in Hawaii in June 2024 for the 13th Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture. Faftai, mahalo nui, aloha.
Everybody give a big mahalo to Aaron Sala and his whole team up here. Aaron, don't go very far. I want to find out how to make a spam musubi. Is there any way to actually make the seaweed crispy around the musubi, or does it just have to blend together? There's no way to keep it crispy, huh? I'm gonna TikTok it. Anyway, I also want to give props to Miss Liz and Alex here, who have been our ASL interpreters. You guys, when she was doing the drums too, I was like, oh, we're getting into all the details. Okay, wait, is there a sign for my name at all? Like, is there one for Jeannie? Okay, I can spell with you, Jeannie. Hey! Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, ladies. They said that they swap. I was talking to Alex backstage. She was like, they swap because they just need to give their mental a break for a second because it takes so much to compute and process what they're doing now. And I was like, I need y'all in my life because sometimes people schedule Zoom meetings for things that I think should be in an email. I can't. Like, I'm like, let me get the interpreter to like come and do this work for me. But thank you, ladies, for everything that you do. Yes. So ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to introduce a woman who has an incredible gift of taking us into the tapestry of human experiences. This babe right here, she's an award-winning host and executive producer of the captivating This Is Life with Lisa Ling. I know, right? She is my absolute woman crush every day, my shiro. She is the link that connects us all. You like that? Give it up for our woman, Lisa Ling.
Oh, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I thought you were excited cheering for me, but I realized Eric Nam was right behind me. How you doing? How we feeling? A little tired? Yeah, a little bit. Okay, well, listen, I know it's been a long day. We've heard from a lot of voices, but I'm so excited because this panel is about power and harnessing that power and really finding our voice. So I'm so excited to introduce this esteemed panel, a man who needs no introduction, obviously, Eric Nam, who is a singer-songwriter, as you all know, TV personality, actor, and entrepreneur, and the creative director of a media company called Dive Studios. Give it up for Eric Nam. And after serving as an educator, Estella Owima Church is currently the executive director at EPIC, Empowering Pacific Islander Communities. Give it up for Estella. And my friend John Yang, he's the executive director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAAJ, where he works to fight for civil rights and empowers Asian Americans through public policy, advocacy, education, and litigation. John Yang, everyone. And Versha Sharma, and I'm so excited that she's here today because she has a 3-month-old baby who is actually here. Who felt that this was so important that she had to come along with her baby in tow. She is an award-winning journalist who is currently the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue, where she focuses on covering social justice, culture, fashion, and politics. Thank you so much, Versha, for being here. So I'd like to just go down the line, if I could, and ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how and when, or when and how, you found your AA or NHPI voice. Eric, I'll start with you.
Big question. My name is Eric Gum. I am a singer, songwriter, actor, and entrepreneur. And I think when it comes to my AA NHPI voice, I think I'm still developing. I think we're all kind of developing it. For a long time, we were told that we don't have space in the spaces that we exist. And so I think in recent years, we're seeing ourselves represented in media in so many incredible places, and we're just now starting to get our footing and getting comfortable with expressing ourselves to our fullest ability. So for me, I think it comes in the form of creating music and art, but also it comes with creating businesses, media business, but also a mental health platform that I created with my brothers. So I think that's where I've been finding my voice, not only on the creative side, but figuring out what is the social impact that we want to create as AA and NHPI creators. So that is what I do.
Love that, Eric. Estella, when did you find your NHPI voice?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, big question, right?
Yeah, big question.
Tala falava alo uingoa Stella Rima Church for having me. So former educator, was in the classroom for 10 years, and I now get to serve, shout out to teachers. I now get to serve community with an amazing team at EPIC. We are a pro-Black, pro-Indigenous national organization based in Los Angeles, and we are working to advance social justice on behalf of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities through research, advocacy, leadership development, and narrative change. My voice, I think, I would agree. It's definitely still in development, but I think as an undergrad, a Black Studies major, I am Black Pacifica with roots in Satufia, Sabai Samoa, and in Calabar, Nigeria. I was born and raised by Tovangar in Los Angeles, and I'm a very proud Angelino, and working to be a better relative for Tongva Nation. And I think the voice came as a Black Studies student, undergrad at Cal State Northridge, when I read Audre Lorde's first line in her speech where she says, "I am Black mother, warrior, poet, and I have come to do my work asking if you have done the same." And I was like, oh. I got some work to do, but also it was the first time it had dawned on me that I absolutely have all of the right and authority to be everything that I am all the time, holistically, unapologetically. I am Black, I am Pacifica, and every space I come into, all of those ancestors are with me. And so they're here with me today, and I am grateful for them.
John?
Sure. So for me, for my organization, our organization advocates, we educate, and we empower people. So what I mean by advocate is we are here in the capital city trying to advocate for policies with the administration and Congress for the betterment of Asian Americans. It includes litigation, things such as keeping the citizenship question off of our census in 2020. When I talk about sort of educating, it's making sure that media narratives about our community are right. So pushing back against things like the China virus or chain migration, terms that are offensive to our community. And then when I talk about empower, is working with all of our community partners that do this serious work on the ground to make sure that our communities are served. In terms of my voice, I actually don't go back to what Senator Hirono says about, it's not about finding my voice, but how we use our voice. And how we use our voice comes from all of us, right? All of our own lived experiences. So for me, that is a lived experience as a Midwestern boy on the outskirts of Chicago when there's so few Asian Americans that I was called chink, that I literally got into fights for being Asian American. I'm not proud of it, but I am proud of it, right? It is but the fact that I'm an undocumented immigrant, a so-called illegal alien, and I found my path to citizenship through bipartisan legislation signed in 1986. It is as an advocate now, recognizing that I have the privilege of being here in DC to advocate for all of us to create change that all of us can really benefit from, to feel protected, to feel more secure, to feel more included in our society.
Thank you, John. Varsha, tell us a little bit about yourself and when did you find your AA voice?
So I am a proud Indian American from central Louisiana. That's where I grew up. And I think, yes, I don't know if that's for Indian Americans or Louisiana, whatever it is. I like both. But I think growing up as a brown girl in the Deep South and the Bible Belt 100% shaped my voice and my life and worldview. And I think there were a couple factors there. Certainly I felt othered in a lot of ways. And I'm also very grateful to my parents who found a community with other Indian immigrants and South Asian immigrants and raised their children in this community as well. So I had a little bit of both. And I think that, you know, being editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue now, I think a lot about that little girl growing up in Central Louisiana and never seeing somebody who looked like me on the cover of a magazine. I'm now almost 2 years into the job, and I'm very proud to say I put 4 South Asians on the cover of the magazine, and it's great, and lots of Asian Americans as well. Also not seeing anybody like myself in a job like this. Like, Lisa, you were the Asian American journalist that I watched on Channel 1 News growing up, and now we have a lot more, thankfully, but Lisa was absolutely a trailblazer. And so I think all of that, yes, props for Lisa. I think the very few role models like yourself that I saw in media helped me find my voice, and you know, I'm still working on it. I absolutely agree with what Senator Hirono said as well, which is, yes, it's about finding your voice, but it's also about learning how to use it, because we're all born with it, right? We're born with our voices, and it's just demanding that people listen to us now.
Portia, I mean, I'm deeply humbled and flattered to hear you say that, but I think even for me, even though I've worked in television for so long, when you ask me that question, when did you find your AA voice? That is also a difficult question for me, because when you grow up and you don't see people who look like you or your stories reflected in the media or in history books or in politics, it's hard to be definitive about what that voice is. So I appreciate you taking on that big question. Eric, you have a massive following across so many platforms, but you have decided to really take on this issue of mental health across all of your platforms. I wonder where you see that need and among your fans and your audience, and what kinds of things are resonating with your fans when it comes to mental health.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, my brothers and I, we started a company called Dive Studios, and it started really fun, podcasts, K-pop content. What we found is so many people wanted to hear the stories that were most relatable, and that is the human experience. Conversations around depression. Is that me? Sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening.
Talking about depression, anxiety, everyone's getting all tense and
Gosh.
getting feedback.
Yeah, but we created this platform called Mindset, and the purpose and the mission behind it is to really normalize conversations around mental health through storytelling. It is a platform, it is a community. We have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on our platform, and the reason that it's become such a big part of who I am and what I do is that particularly in Asian AAPI and NHPI communities, it goes just really not spoken about. We also know that for AAPI communities, just use that. Thank you. For AAPI communities.
That doesn't work.
Hello. There we go. For AAPI communities, oftentimes we're the least to seek mental health care, and when we do, it is at a time of crisis. It is an emergency time, and we want to get people to a place where it is preventative. Mental health is something we should take care of every single day. And so I think it's not just my fans, it's a human issue that we feel very strongly about, that I feel very strongly about. And it's kind of embedded not only into the work that I do, but also the music, the TV shows, everything that I talk about. And I think as a creator, it's so empowering and it's very powerful when people listen to my songs or whatever I was going to say. This spoke to me and it saved my life. I've had people break down in tears at concerts just sharing that story with me. And so for my brothers and I, it's really about how do we continue to make this as accessible as possible? How do we really tell these stories from the biggest K-pop stars to the biggest Western stars and athletes and actors so that everybody feels and can hear and see themselves in this conversations that we're having with mental health. And so that's kind of been the focus that I've taken on in the past few years, using my Asian American voice, I guess.
Well, yes. I so applaud you for that, Eric, because I think we recognize that there are so many young people in crisis right now, and taking the initiative to be open and candid about how important it is to learn how to feel or be given permission to be able to feel is so vital. So thank you for that. Versha, you also have a very big teen following. And so I wonder if you can talk about the things that you have seen or the struggles that young people who follow your magazine or who are readers of your magazine are experiencing, and what are ways that we can empower this generation?
I think having this conversation right now is fantastic. Listening, Eric, to you talk about what you're doing and focusing on is 100% where we start. I think making people feel like they're not alone is number one. And like Eric said, Asian American youth are statistically less likely to seek treatment. I myself go to therapy every week, or try to keep up with it every week. I'm a huge fan of it. I think everybody should go to therapy if they can. I have, dealt with anxiety and depression pretty much my whole life. And I think, being able to be on this stage and just talk about that and talk about it with other people in the audience, backstage, normalizing it and realizing how important it is that we just give voice to our feelings, just like you said, is incredibly important. And so particularly with the pandemic, we've seen some really disheartening statistics about how young AA and NHPI youth are feeling. First of all, young people are feeling more isolated since the pandemic began because, school shutdowns, just the era that we're living in now, it's completely understandable. But then also the rising hate crimes and hate that we've seen against Asian Americans as well has really caused a huge issue amongst our community in general. And so I think reaching out to people, letting them know they're not alone, letting them know there are resources, places to seek help. There are fantastic free resources online, groups that you can go to. And I think just the more that we have this conversation, the better.
Did you, Versha, did you feel apprehensive about being open about dealing with depression throughout your life? And how did the people who follow you, how did they respond to that?
Everybody, I won't say everybody, I'll say a lot of people have responded very well, which I'm very grateful for. I've talked about it for a good portion of my career now that I think I feel, even talking about it right now, I'm a little uncomfortable, I'll be honest. But people have been so appreciative of bringing it up and being honest about it. And I'm grateful to my own bosses and mentors in my past life. Before Teen Vogue, I worked at Now This for 7 years, another newsroom run for young people, by young people, incredibly diverse, just a wonderful place. And my boss there went to therapy, and she was open about it, and that encouraged me to then be open about it. And so it's just sort of that cascading effect, and if I can help one person talk a little bit more about it, then I'm very happy.
We really need to normalize that conversation about therapy. John and Estella, I want to ask you both, the COVID pandemic really exposed so much ugliness and so much racism that has just been simmering beneath the surface. What would you say the lessons have been, right? What have we learned from that period? Where are we now, and how do you see conversations and how do you see action around this topic moving forward? Estella, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think you alluded to it. These were definitely issues that already persisted, and the pandemic just sort of magnified them. It continues to be painfully obvious that we as a collective are still struggling to dismantle systems and structures of racism and white supremacy that are absolutely embedded in all of our systems and structures across this country. It also becomes very obvious that all of us, in many ways, have been complicit in each of those systems and structures, and that we are internally, individually, struggling to do what Audre Lorde says, is to do our work. And part of that work is also our personal identity voyages to figure out who we are, who we're supposed to be, what our kuleana is, like what is the responsibility, the higher call, the purpose that you were put here to do, that your ancestors are behind you rooting for you to do, to accomplish. And I know that it's difficult to do that deep, reflective, sometimes very painful, traumatic work, but it's absolutely necessary if as a collective we're going to dismantle and disrupt those deeply rooted systemic structures and barriers that continue to hamper our communities from accessing the resources that they need and thriving. And just thinking about voice, just sitting here listening to folks, I'm like, I actually have never had the privilege of not being an advocate. It's not my existence in this country. It's just not my truth. And I've always had to be as a little girl, and I watch my 9-year-old, she also has to be an advocate because the world sees a little black girl. The world sees a little PI girl, and that's all she is. And so or that's all she is to other folks. She's the universe to me. It just continues to be obvious that we have a lot of internal work to do individually and as a collective. And then I also think about the term BIPOC that has become a buzzword, and just in thinking about the intent of that term, right? We to do better, we want to center the most marginalized in our communities. And so for BIPOC, we put Black Indigenous first, right? And so I just offer, as Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, and particularly Melanesian folks in our communities continue to struggle for visibility, visible together, right? That we reconsider the way that we use these terms because they've become weapons against many of our communities that are struggling to be seen even today, right now, in this space, right?
Estella, if you don't mind if I pick up on that, in this country right now, we are in the midst of a really ugly culture war. And as a former educator, I mean, I'm sure you were always a teacher, but you're not actively in the classroom anymore. What words of advice would you give to those in education who are on the receiving end of this literal attempt to close the book on diverse histories?
My advice isn't to educators because we're in the trenches. My advice is to community, is to parents, is to CBOs, is to lawmakers, is to school board members, is to talk to your kids and talk to your educators. Teachers are very adept at getting out of young people's way and letting them lead the way they are supposed to and meant to, the way they want to. And all of the rhetoric around the country that is hampering kids' access to quality, equitable, culturally responsive education is all outside of the classrooms. It's not coming from teachers inside the classrooms. It's not coming from the kids. It's not coming from our communities. It's coming from folks who are very out of touch with our children and with our parents and with our schools. And so the call is to everyone else. Show up for your teachers, show up for the kids in the classroom and listen. Stop talking. Listen to them and take heed to what they have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it occurs to me that so many of the things that we've been hearing today, there is a contingent of Americans who would literally not, want to prevent their kids from hearing what we've been hearing today. So it's incumbent upon all of us to expose our kids and to keep fighting for exposure and for knowledge, really. John, going back to the question about the racism that COVID exposed, where would you say we are right now? What have we learned? And also talk about, how sort of fragile things are. I mean, here we are celebrating this month and these incredible achievements, but in an instant, during periods of instability, things can turn and an entire community can become scapegoated again. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely, and thanks for the question. Let me start by telling all of us, let's remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. It is a sport that we all must participate in. And so part of what I really appreciate about this panel is all of us come from different backgrounds, But the common link is that we're all trying to tell the story of who we are as Asian Americans. And that's a story that all of you, after these panels, after today, should bring out to your communities to make sure that we all know who we are as Asian Americans. Because Lisa, you're absolutely right. This is very fragile. Certainly in the last 3 years, you can say that some of this anti-Asian hate started because of COVID-19 and that the words that were used around COVID-19 targeted all of our communities. But it's not going to end here. I mean, we have real geopolitical differences with the Chinese government right now. And you see that in the news every single day. And so we need to make sure that when we talk about these issues, we remain nuanced all of this. So certainly words matter, and then these actions matter in terms of what we do with all of this. I really appreciate what Estella is saying about education. You know, all of our communities have been marginalized communities, have been vulnerable communities. And so what we say to educators, what we say to those people that are trying to push back against telling our histories is, look, these histories are our lived experiences. The least that they can do is learn about our experiences.
Thank you, John. In closing, I just want to ask everyone to answer a question. I mean, I know that there are a lot of youth leaders in the audience and people who still might be struggling to find their AA and NHPI voice. What advice would you give them to be able to sort of harness that voice? First, I'll start with you down there.
Well, first I would say tune out the noise, because there is a lot of noise in terms of pressures from different people, whether it's coming from your peers or sometimes even your family, to live your life a certain way. And I say that because, like the panel before us with creatives, you know, my own family, my own parents were not convinced that I could have a successful, stable career as a journalist, right? It wasn't until I basically got this job that they were like, maybe easing back on going to law school. So understand that pressures come from everywhere, including your own family, and it's just really important to find your own passions and give voice to what those are and stay true to yourself in that regard. And also know that that might change, and also know that it's going to take some time. So.
Okay, I lied. I can't have everyone give their advice on finding your voice because we have to wrap. But thank you so much for being part of this. Estella, John, Bersha, and Eric Nam. I want to direct you to a video. Eric got a chance to talk to our Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, about mental health, and we're going to show you that video now. Thank you all so much.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be there for the White House Forum on Asian Americans and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. In recognition of this gathering, Eric Nam and I had a fantastic conversation about his life story, and especially as it relates to mental health. Here are some highlights from our chat. You can listen to the full conversations on my podcast, House Calls with Dr. Vivek Murthy. Take care and enjoy this time together. Well, Eric, let's get into your music. You've talked about music as a way to heal. And I'm curious, like, how does that belief in healing, like, show up in your music or in your songwriting process?
What I have found is the more honest and vulnerable I am in expressing and explaining what I'm going through, oftentimes the better the song. That's why every piece of music that I write, I have like a very distinct memory about that song. It's a page out of my diary, essentially.
And it seems like a key part of your process is to be vulnerable. How did you learn how to be vulnerable?
When you contain and you hold on to these moments of stress or anxiety or whatever it is that you're going through, it's not good for your health, mental and physical. And I had to learn all that the hard way. I think when I started to realize that, just having like close guarded conversations with intimate friends, like then I was like, oh, this isn't a big deal to share that I'm going through a very hard time. And people are gonna help me, and it's not gonna be a point of judgment. And a lot of people, I think, appreciate that. They appreciate when you're vulnerable with them.
Well, what do you love most about being Korean American?
Ooh. I love every side of myself, of the Korean Americanness. And I say that because I think when we were growing up, I don't know how you felt, but I always felt othered. I never felt like I ever fit in. But what I'm realizing now is that experience of feeling othered, of being third cultured, there are so many of us who feel that way and are connected in that way. And also understanding that being third cultured is a superpower because we understand multiple cultures and maybe even multiple languages all at once. We can sit at the intersection of a incredibly globalized world. And also, Korean food, music, skincare, TV, film, killing it. So.
Now, most important question. If you and I started a boy band together, what would we call it?
Really valid names.
Should it be oriented around food?
It could. It could be about like Korean, Indian, Chinese fusion.
You know what dosas are? You
I
have dosas
love
in India?
dosas.
Oh, they're so good. I love dosas too, and I actually like eating dosas with gochujang sauce, right? Because it's such a great combination that just people don't do often enough. But there could be something with different dishes or sauces that we.
What if it's dosajang?
Dosajang.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's actually a pretty cool name.
I love it. We've got our boy band name. Eric,
All right.
this is it.
Vivek, I'm telling you, Coachella 2025, it's happening.
there we go.
We're gonna make a docu-series behind it as well.
I love it.
Please welcome Jerry Wan.
Please welcome Emmy Award-winning television personality and producer Jeannie Mai Jenkins and White House Senior Advisor for Public Engagement, Philip Kim.
Well, I hope everyone's been having a great time so far. Okay. Take a second, stretch it out, and buckle up because the moment we've all been waiting for is finally here. Today's forum is all about shining light on AA and NHPI excellence, and this leader is no stranger to making waves and breaking barriers. As the first ever South Asian and our first AA and NHPI leader to serve as Vice President, we couldn't be more excited to have Vice President Harris here with you and share about all of her incredible work and leadership at the highest level.
And she is serving fashion honey, one iconic pantsuit at a time. Here to introduce Madam Vice President is producer of Dear Asian America, Jerry Wan.
Thank you, Phil. I am actually not what you've been waiting all day for. I stand between you and who you actually came for, so give it up for ourselves, everybody. This is us. I know it's dark and I can't see you either, but there's a bunch of people in here who look like us. And I've had the pleasure of sharing all of our stories and getting to know so many of you. And what an honor to be able to stand here before you and to introduce our friend, our leader. But before I do, and I don't know what camera is, but I want to say hello and I love you too, Jacob and Charlotte. This is all for you guys. I am joined. I got through that without crying. Thanks, Dad. I'm going to be joined on stage, and I'm here to introduce actor, producer, and America's favorite strict brown mom, Purna Jagannathan. And now, all that you've been waiting for all day, so get your cameras out, start live streaming. My and your and our Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Go Warriors. Well, Doug's not here, I could say it. Hi, everyone. Hi. Wow. What an extraordinary group of leaders in one place at one time. This is very exciting.
Would it be possible to get the house lights up just for a second so the Vice President can see what the room actually looks like?
This is a big deal. Joe Biden would say that a little differently, but this is a big deal. Very big deal.
Amazing to be with you today, Madam Vice President. I'm going to start off with a personal story.
Okay.
In 2019, I was invited to be part of a show called Never Have I Ever. Of course. And my character is an immigrant Tamilian mother raising an out-of-control teenager in Southern California. And the demographic parallels are crazy. I'm an immigrant Tamilian mother raising a truly out-of-control teenager in Southern California. But the creators, Mindy Kaling and Lang Fisher, encouraged all of us to do something which I've never experienced in my 15 years of working in TV and film, which is to enter set every day with your full self.
Yeah.
All our stories, all our experiences, all our heritage.
Yeah.
So, and that showed up in big ways, like in the plot and in the script, and showed up in small ways, like, deciding whether we'd have idli or dosa with our hands that day.
Oh, yeah.
Being in a no-shoe household, or during the scene, dropping words of endearment that my mother would say to me, like kana, which means kanama, which means dear one.
Yes.
And my mother's favorite word to me is kaide, which means brainless donkey. But my heritage is something that would always make me feel like a bit of an outsider all these years, and suddenly it is the thing that makes and gives me an intense sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So many beautiful stories of the diaspora come from it and fuel me, and it has brought me all the way to you today. Yeah. So what a gift. I just want to ask you about your heritage.
Yeah.
You've talked so much about where you come from and your complex heritage.
Yeah.
I want to know, however, that, and also how has it influenced how you have led in these last few years?
Yeah. Well, I too was raised by a mother. Well, I think for so many of us, if your parents' first language was something other than English, when people are feeling pure emotions, either of love or extreme frustration, they go back to the mother language. So I did not learn a lot of the language because my mother just didn't have a lot of people to speak to in Tamil. But I did learn all the words of affection and frustration. And I could recite some of them, but I'm going to spare you and myself from that. But, I think that one of the great gifts that so many of us have when you have been exposed to different cultures is that you understand in a very profound and sincere way that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. You really do. You learn that culturally, the love of a mother, the love of a grandparent, it's crossing cultures and languages is so common in terms of the experience that so many of us have. And I think that's a real gift, especially in moments like this moment, where in our country in particular, we are seeing these powerful forces that are trying to sow hate and division among us. Those of us who have been raised with a lived experience then of understanding commonality, I think have a particular commitment and conviction to make sure that those that would try and separate actually don't win in terms of that approach. So there is that. My mother came to the United States by herself at the age of 19. And she was part of one of the first waves of Indians to come to the US. She came in, I think, 59. And let's talk about my grandfather. My mother was the eldest, and so we all know culturally what it means to be the eldest, to the chagrin of our younger siblings. And she actually applied because she wanted to be a scientist, and she wanted to study in what was considered to be one of the best schools. And so she kind of secretly applied to UC Berkeley. Go Bears. And she got accepted, and she told my grandfather. And she said, I want to go. And my grandfather was a very progressive dude. He looked at his eldest child, who was also his daughter, and said, okay, you go. So at the age of 19, you know, this is transcontinental flight, she'd never been to the United States, she went. And in many ways, when I think of my mother's story, I think of culturally that she was so comfortable and clear about where she came from and who she was. And she had a unique ability to, I think, really infuse in us a sense of pride and a sense of understanding that we should not let anyone define our identity. My mother would often say, you don't let people tell you who you are, you tell them who you are. And, you know, I mean, this is an experience that I had growing up as the eldest child also, watching my mother, who, if you ever met her, you would have thought she was 7 feet tall, but she really wasn't exactly 5 feet tall. And, you know, she was this brown woman with an accent. And I also was acutely aware as the eldest child of how she would be treated. And at a very young age, understood also how people would make certain assumptions about the character and the intelligence of someone else based on those attributes. And so early in my life, I also understood how these disparities and these stereotypes could attempt to define and marginalize people, and what we must always do to fight against that. My grandfather was one of the favorite people in my life, and I was the eldest grandchild. So he convinced me I was the special favorite one, but I think he told all the grandchildren the same thing. And my grandfather would take, by the time we would go to India every other year. And my grandfather had a tradition of every morning taking a walk with his buddies, who are all retired. And this was, you know, they were part of, you know, the independence of India. And my grandfather would talk with his friends about the importance of fighting for democracy and independence, the importance of fighting against corruption, the importance of fighting for equality, regardless of where someone was born or what so-called, you know, status, because of course India has a very troubled history with that. And so my story is also a story of being raised in a family and in a community where there was a real fight to always uphold the importance of independence and identity. And in fact, I just recently got back from the continent of Africa, and it was a trip that I intentionally curated in a way that we would talk about the continent in a way that it was about recognizing the innovation and ingenuity that is happening on that continent. Again, fighting against stereotypes, right? And in fact, I'm sure everybody here knows, but the median age on the continent of Africa is 19. Oh, yes. And there is some incredible work happening among young leaders there. But so three countries I visited, started in Ghana, then Tanzania, and then I went to Zambia. Well, the Zambia trip was to highlight, as I did in the first two countries, what's happening in terms of democracy. and innovation. But it was also because, you see, my grandfather and my grandparents and my grandmother lived in Lusaka, the capital of Zambia, my Indian grandfather, because when many of the African countries, and I'll speak about Zambia in particular, when they gained independence and fought against colonialism and gained independence, the Indian government, which had just fought for independence, would send support. So my grandfather moved to Lusaka with my grandmother, and we went to visit him there. And it was also nice to highlight something that we all know who have learned about the history of the world also, to highlight these relationships that are about, commonality based also on struggle, including the struggle and the fight for independence. And that was a special treat for me. And I actually went to the place where they had lived. It was since rebuilt, but my aunt who was there, who went on to head up she was an OBGYN, she went on to head up the OB section of PGI in Chandigarh, which is a teaching hospital in Chandigarh in India, in the north. She was a young postdoc there and worked with, had a friend who was a young African doctor down the street, and they would walk to hospital. This is not the hospital, they walked to hospital every day. And it turned out that that young man ended up being the Minister of Health years later for Zambia, and instituted what I'm told was similar to what we did here under President then Obama and Vice President Biden around the Affordable Care Act. And so it was just nice to also make these connections between all of these countries and commonality around a fight for independence, as an example.
Thank you for sharing that story. It's these stories that I think really help us connect. In addition to your illustrious title of Vice President, you also hold the title of being the most popular guest on Dear Asian Americans, which is obvious. But I think when we listen to the stories, and I think people make assumptions about you and without getting to know your story. And so when we say representation matters, yes, it does, but we also have to do the additional reaching out and learning and asking the right questions of, where are you from, why are you doing this, and what do you want to do? In positions of power here in Washington and across the country, we're seeing more and more folks of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander descent choosing to run for office. And that's not really on the menu of things that were approved by our parents, right? It's a very short list. I think we all know what it is, and politician isn't really one of them. We're seeing that more. You're leading the way, obviously, and the administration is leading the way in having our representatives from our community. Hopefully we get another big one soon. Talk to us about the importance of representation in leadership, particularly within the government.
So I'll connect this previous conversation with your point, because I think that there are people who know, as part of my origin story, that my parents were active in the civil rights movement. That's where they met, at Berkeley. Go Bears, okay. But some people, I think, couldn't wrap their head around, how did your mother, who was a young Indian woman, get involved in the civil rights movement? And then there was a bit of clarity when people thought about the fact that, oh, right, the movement for independence, for freedom, right? And so I think that there is also, as part of the origin story of a lot of immigrants, a really deep knowledge and understanding of the power of government, and the importance of democracy, and what happens when democracies don't exist or are not intact, when there are oppressive regimes, when there is corruption. And so it is not as though the immigrant story is that one comes here and has no knowledge and awareness of it, right? And I think that's a really important point to acknowledge. It is a matter of then whether one, decides that, do I want my son or daughter to become a doctor? Or, okay, law school is okay. but representation matters, right? And so what we are seeing with more recent generations of the kids who come from immigrant families is a recognition that if we are to be fully a part of, if we are to be fully actualized, we should not be excluded from any system, and we should not self-select to exclude. And I think that's part of it. I think also part of it, frankly, is, you know, I saw a lot more activism in terms of social justice and civil rights activism after we've had awful incidents, like the hate crime that happened against people who appeared to be South Asian or Muslim or were profiled, right, because they were wearing a turban after 9/11. And what ended up happening around just understanding you can't expect other people to fight for your rights. We build community and we'll build coalition, but one has to also step up and make sure that we are all in the room when these fights occur so that each person can offer their voice based on their lived experience. And I think we have seen that happen more and more. But we still have so much more work to do. And it is also about political activism in terms of just voter participation. But for example, I'm going to be in Georgia later this month, and the AAPI turnout for not only us, for Joe Biden and me, but for Warnock and Ossoff, really helped determine, if not was determinative, in terms of the outcome of those elections. So there's work that we have been doing also to get people more actively involved, and people are seeing themselves in the system because of the people on the stage and in this room, and I think that we are seeing more activism as a result of that, and it's sorely needed. It's sorely needed.
Okay. So an important topic on my mind, being a woman, a mother, a survivor of sexual assault, is reproductive health care.
Yeah.
And with the Roe versus Wade being overturned, we're seeing unprecedented attack on the reproductive health care system. I was delighted to know from your team that 74% of Asian Americans surveyed said abortion should be legal in all or most cases. And I would love to know, what is the administration doing to address those needs?
So, first of all, thank you for being so courageous to tell your story. And this is an issue that I think is something that demands and requires all leaders to speak up. And we all need to build on the movement that started before and led to Roe v. Wade being decided, and we must pick up to move forward and get a United States Congress who has the courage and the willingness to pass legislation that would put the protections of Roe v. Wade into law at a national level. And again, I come at this being raised by a mother who fought for women's health rights and fought for the dignity that women should have and deserve to have in the healthcare system, and fought against the inequities that were present there. And so this issue of fighting for women's reproductive care, for me, it's just something that is very personal in terms of just a lifelong acknowledgement and understanding about the disparities and the unfairness and the indignities that women can face in the healthcare system. And if you compound race, if you compound language barriers, profound impacts result. And so on this issue, let's look at where we are. The United States Supreme Court, the highest court in our land, just took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the people of America, from the women of America. And what that we then saw is, in states around our country, extremist so-called leaders started proposing and passing laws that would criminalize healthcare providers, literally laws that provide for jail time for doctors and nurses and healthcare providers. passing laws that make no exception for rape or incest. And many of you know, a majority of my career was as a prosecutor, and as a prosecutor, I specialized in crimes of violence against women and children. The idea that you would say to an individual who has survived an act of violence and violation to their body, to say to that person that after that, you will also be deprived and we will take away your ability to make the next decision about what happens to your body. That's immoral. That's immoral. And that's what's happening in our country with these people who puff and huff and they're so big and bad and they beat their chest. They're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to just be in awe of their intelligence, and what they're doing is absolutely unconscionable. And on this point, let's also recognize that for women of color, women with immigrant background, women who may have language barriers, the impact on them is even more severe in terms of where can they go? Where will they have the ability to be in a safe place to address one of the most personal issues that a person can face? And the concern I have, and we have so many leaders here that I would ask us to all be also thoughtful about on this issue, is there is also underlying this a centuries-old issue of judging women based on their sexuality. And so an environment that on this issue is also intended and certainly has the effect of making these individuals feel embarrassed, ashamed, as though they've done something wrong. And what that means in terms of compounding their sense of isolation. And in that way, suggesting to them that they are alone and that they are not seen and that we don't care about supporting them and their voice and their autonomy and their independence. So there's a lot at play on this issue. And ultimately, I think that the way that this is going to be resolved is we have to keep voting, and we have to vote people in office who have the courage to stand up and agree that this is about foundational principles that are about freedom and liberty. And I want to say this point also. Let us also agree and speak loudly. One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. You know, but talk about going backwards, right? So you look at this moment we're in, where, you know, a lot of the work that we've been doing as administration, I think today demonstrated that, has been to address what we must do in terms of empowerment of communities, but also to fight against injustice, right? And when we think about where we've been in the last few years in terms of everything from anti-Asian hate crime to what we are looking at in terms of attacks on fundamental freedoms like those that of a woman to make decisions and a person to make decisions about their body, to the attacks we're seeing on voting rights, to the attacks we're seeing on LGBTQ and trans folks, the attacks we're seeing where there are literally, can you imagine in this year of our Lord 2023, book bans? I mean, really, like what? Book bans. And what we are seeing in terms of in places like Florida, where literally teachers who are in a same-sex relationship and have a spouse and a family are afraid to have photographs of their family in their classroom for fear that it will then evoke a conversation with a student that is basically these so-called leaders are saying should not be happening in that classroom. Talk about these, there are attempts that are happening right before our eyes to roll back all of the hard-won freedoms that we have collectively fought for. And this is a time for everyone to stand and to speak out and be very active. You know, there's an old poem about they'll go for, they'll go for, they'll go for, and then they'll come for you. And who will be left? That's the moment we're at right now. And that's why it's so important that we renew always our commitment to the coalition and to standing together and saying no one should be made to fight alone.
Thank you so much. You know, speaking of coalitions and allyship, our community felt that very strongly over the last 3 or 4 years as attacks, racist attacks, hate crimes, and even murder against people who look like us in this room have risen, and gun violence is something that we continue to deal with. And there are moments in that, or there's some positives in that many of us in this room have either become more active in the community or have recommitted to continuing to fight the work. And we find friends in different communities who share, and we finally realize that we are not so much different after all. Can you address what you and President Biden and the rest of the administration are doing to address the continued attacks on our community, particularly with gun violence?
So we are seeing a rise in hate crimes, period, right? I mean, my husband, the second gentleman of the United States of America, has been doing a lot of work fighting against anti-Semitism. And so we are seeing a rise of that, a horrendous rise in Asian hate crime, where grandmothers are afraid to go to the store. And their families are afraid for them to go to the store, which is part of their routine and their social, traditions. We're seeing the marginalization, we're seeing the bullying, we're seeing a tenor where one should be praised for their so-called strength, but they evidence their strength and it's measured based on who they beat down, when in fact I think we all agree you measure strength based on who you lift up, right? And so there's a lot of work that we have to do against this moment of this tone and this approach to what does strength look like, what does leadership look like. And in that regard, on the issue of gun violence then, there are a number of specific things that have to happen. In terms of, to your question, what our administration has done under President Joe Biden, we have passed smart gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years that moves the ball forward. But we've got more to do. We have more to do. We should have a national ban on assault weapons. These are weapons of war. They're weapons of war that have no place in the streets of a civil society. We should have red flag laws. We should have background checks. Why should we have background checks? Well, because you might want to know if someone has been found to be a danger to themselves or others before you let them buy a gun. It's just reasonable. And we cannot be seduced into perpetuating this false choice that suggests that you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want reasonable gun safety laws. It's a false choice. I support the Second Amendment. I also want to see an assault weapons ban. I also want to see universal background checks. I want to see red flag laws. I want to see that our babies are not sitting in a classroom where they should be able to learn how to read and write and explore their ideas about what the future of the country can hold, but instead they're sitting there also being taught how to hide in a closet and be quiet if there's an active shooter in their classroom. That's what's happening. I grew up in California where, I'm going to date myself, but when I grew up, the only thing we had to learn was, duck and under a table if there's an earthquake, right? Now our children are literally afraid. I have talked to kids who say, I like this class and I like this, but I don't like going to fifth period. Why don't you like going to fifth period? Because in that classroom, there's no closet. So there is so much about this issue that is about saving lives on every level. And we need people to have the courage to act. And that is the one thing that is lacking in this United States Congress and in legislatures around the country. And again, we have to step up and we have to demand action. Lives are at stake.
Madam VP, it is Small Business Week.
Yes. Moving on to a different subject.
Yes. So, we'd love to know what the administration is doing to support small business, especially Asian-owned small business.
Yeah.
And I just remember during the pandemic, places like Chinatown and Filipino Town were deserted. There was no foot traffic. And
J-Town.
Yeah. There's just no bouncing back because there's such an erosion.
Yeah.
And our Asian entrepreneurs are historically less likely to be funded.
Yeah.
So would love to know what's being done.
So I love small businesses. I really do. And we had growing up, my mother would work long days and weekends and from time to time, and there was a woman who lived 2 doors down from us, Mrs. Shelton, who, if our mother was working later on weekends, we would go and stay with Miss Shelton. And we lived in the apartment above her nursery school. She was a small business owner. And her role was to be almost a matriarch in the community. She was not only a business leader, she was a civic leader. She would mentor. I would see her from time to time counsel young parents. She was part of the fabric of the community. And that's who small business owners are, right? They're the ones who will sponsor the local softball league. They are the ones who, will recognize the people who come in and notice if you're having a good day or a bad day, and if it's a restaurant, maybe sit you down and know exactly what you like to eat. And not to mention that half of our workforce who works in the private sector, not in government, either runs or works in a small business. So there are many, many reasons to support our small businesses, and the point that you are making is a critical one. Not all of them have equal access to capital. So when we think about younger small business owners, it's interesting. I think they more self-identify as entrepreneurs, but they are actually small business owners. But with great ideas and with ambition, which we want to encourage, but don't necessarily have generational wealth and access to capital. So the work that I've been doing it actually started in the Senate, working with some of my colleagues in the Senate. We got $12 billion extra to put into community banks. And so our administration has been building on a lot of the work that is about bringing private equity investment and private investment together with what we are investing in community banks to increase the capacity then from people who are in the community to give capital and access to capital to these small businesses to start as startups, but also to grow and expand. And we're seeing great return on that. Under our administration, we've also seen an historic increase in the number of small businesses being started, and many of whom are in communities of color. And it's work that we have to continue to do. But to your point, in particular, when we're thinking about Asian small businesses, and of course it ranges. It's everything from construction to a daycare center to a restaurant it ranges. The work is just literally about understanding the value of that small business to that community, culturally. Understanding, to your point, there are people in that community that want idli for breakfast. And so the South Asians here know what I'm talking about, right? And that's the only restaurant that will make idli for breakfast, right? But, the big bank won't necessarily know that. But community banks do. And they understand then the importance of a particular product or a service to a particular community. So yes, that's a good idea, and let's fund it. So that's the work that we're doing.
And to everybody here, obviously, and those watching, we need to support our businesses, not just in Heritage Month, but all throughout the year. Because when you spend money at our businesses, we then go take that money and give it to a friend, a neighbor, another small Asian business, and that's how we're going to make our community stronger. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. The theme of today is Visible Together, and whether it is talking about reproductive rights or gun violence or identity and leadership, we're all working very hard in our own ways to make this a safer place for our children and our next generation. For many of us to see you get elected was such a big deal because it was a first. And for my kids and for all of our kids, I don't want that to be a big deal anymore. I just want it to be, oh, another one, and you get to be the first. But I want you to share with us sort of your parting thoughts to the future leaders of our country. Maybe some of them aren't here in the audience, but certainly some are watching. And a message of inspiration and hope from the Vice President.
I'll offer two. One, my mother would say often to me, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things, make sure you're not the last. So that is part of the responsibility we each have. But the other piece of advice, in particular to maybe some of the younger leaders here but actually, it doesn't matter the age. You will often find that when you walk into that boardroom or that meeting room, that conference room, you will often find that you will be the only one there who looks like you or who has had your life experience. So here's what I've got to say. You walk in that room with your chin up and your shoulders back, knowing that when you walk in that room, you are representing the voice of so many people who are so darn, I was going to say it differently, proud that you are in that room. And that and just remember when the lights were on, they'll probably come on again, and that you remember this, we are all in that room with you. You are not walking in that room alone. And that is critically important to remember. Sometimes I know it is intended mostly to be a compliment, but when people say, oh, you're special. But my grandfather, it's different, okay? If Grandpa said it, it's a different thing altogether. But sometimes when you're told that, it can also be about saying, oh, you're the only one like you, which is another way of saying you're alone. You're not alone. Don't ever walk into those rooms being made to feel or think that you are alone. We are all in that room with you. And that is critically important because we have so much work to do. And we should do it always with pride and with a sense of knowledge that we come with people. You come with people.
The Vice President, everybody.
All right. Can we just give another round of applause to all of our incredible speakers and performers today? Can we give a warm round of applause to Jerry Porter and Madam Vice President as well, please? Today, we've heard so many rich stories, beautiful performances, and deeply moving remarks about how to bring about real change for our AA and NHPI communities. And as our icon, Sandra Oh, said, it is truly an honor just to be Asian and to be a part of this AA and NHPI community. All good things must come to an end, however, and you guessed it, our program is sadly coming to a close. But before we close, we'd like to bring out one final performer to bring us home. Please welcome to the stage award-winning singer, songwriter, and influencer, Wolf Tyler.
Close. You know I love you the most. Things we do can't be disclosed. Pictures we can't even post when we're alone. Close. You know I love you the most. Things we do can't be disclosed. Pictures we can't even post when we're alone. I'm not going back to sleep tonight. Anytime I see you, I can't rest unless it's by your side. I won't even try to close my eyes. Anywhere I'm not with you is a place where I can't lie. Okay, okay, you must think I'm willing to play at your game. But what would you say if our love wasn't on the same page? Same page. Close. You know I love you the most. Things we do can't be disclosed. Pictures we can't even post when we're alone. Close. You know I love you the most. Things we do can't be disclosed. Pictures we can't even post when we're alone. I am so grateful to be standing here representing all the little girls, my family, my parents, and last but not least, my grandparents that are Korean immigrants. All the sacrifices, the resilience that they had over the years. I'm just so honored to be standing here in front of everyone. All of you beautiful people. I am so blessed to celebrate and honor all the contributions of the Asian Americans, the Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders that make this country. Here's my next song, Alternate.
Not halfway in, but all the way in. Because I'm going to launch you to myself, and you're going to become my happy home.
Thank you. This one's a special one, just to brighten up the mood. I hope you enjoy. Let the music play. Summer's on the way. You know that I need more better days. So I won't make you stay. You should put your trust in me, trust in me, trust in me. I won't ever let you down, let you fall, let you drown. Even with my lies, I stay on your mind. Go ahead, take your time. Don't go switching sides. find somebody real in the summertime. And I just might put my trust in you. If we make it out the summer, you'll get all my time. So let's just ride, just me and you. All tinted in the coupe, got the stars in the roof. Tell me what you tryna do, cause I've been thinking about you. All tinted in the coupe, got the stars in the roof. Tell me what you tryna do, cause I've been thinking about you. It's just summertime. Let's just try and catch a vibe, or let's just do it. Don't overthink it. Got your hands all on my waist. Two-step while the record plays. Don't keep me waiting. I get impatient for love. Hard to find somebody real in the summertime. And I just might put my trust in you. If we make it out the summer, you'll get all my time. So let's just ride, just me and you. All tinted in the coupe, got the stars in the roof. Tell me what you tryna do, cause I've been thinking about you. All tinted in the coupe, got the stars in the roof. Tell me what you tryna do, cause I've been thinking about you. Thank you so much. My name is Wolf Tyler. 감사합니다.
All right, everybody, let's give it up one more time for Wolf Tyler. We hope you had a great day. Please get home safely. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Take care getting home, everyone. Big ups to all of you.
While